literally could be months. It could be days, really, at this point. We're really on the cusp of a crisis like we've never actually seen in human history.
This is a Gradowski of WeAreChange.org, and we are joined by the one and only dollar vigilante, Jeff Berwick. He's a free thinker. He's an anarchist. He is an economic finance guru, and if you've seen him on many of the financial shows, you've seen him on this YouTube channel sneak into the Bilderberg group with me and then steal their liquor and charge the Bilderberg for a free hotel. Jeff, honor, pleasure joining me today. Now, what is happening with these economic markets? We're hearing all of this bad news on the mainstream media. I know you've been on top of it, but the stock market, the oil prices are all going down. Jeff, what's happening?
Luke, can you speak up a bit? You're not speaking loud enough and with enough energy. You're always so quiet, Luke. And speaking about Bilderberg and us sneaking into Bilderberg, by the way, I'm still a little pissed off at you about putting a video of me sleeping without asking me. But anyway, I'll get over that. As far as the economy goes...
You were resting before our long days of work after a long night of work.
True, but you didn't ask me if you're going to put it up. Anyway, I know you now. I know to be very careful if you're around Luke Gradowski.
It's all on Snapchat.
Yeah, he puts it on Snapchat right away. You can't get it off. It's very sneaky. But as and you also mentioned we stole the liquor. We actually didn't. It was all given to us. They gave us everything for free at the Bilderberg conference, so it was very nice of them.
Yeah, after we snuck in and we're walking around there and then had a whole bunch of like police and intelligence agencies interrogate us and pretty much get really pissed at us for kind of breaking through their major security barriers that they've been setting up for years, and we just walked right in there and broke it right in front of them. And they were shocked. They didn't know what was happening, but it was still an amazing experience. And you got to say that video of you sleeping was pretty classy. But getting back to the subject, Jeff, like it seems even in the mainstream media, a lot of kind of like fear mongering. Stock market's going down, oil's going down. What is really happening financially, economically right now that you aren't hearing in the mainstream media?
Well, I actually don't see a ton of fear-mongering in the mainstream media. For the most part, on the financial media, it is a lot of everything's going to be okay, don't panic. For example, Jim Cramer on CNBC last week when the markets are really crashing, and they have been since the very beginning of the year, since the day one of 2016, he told people not to panic. The last time he did that was in 2008 when he told people that they'd be silly to sell Bear Stearns at $82, and he told people not to panic. They'd be silly to sell it at $82. 6 days later, it was at $2. So turn off the television programming. Definitely, you're not getting good information there. And as you know, Luke, back when we were at Bilderberg, which was around June of this year, I believe, of last year, of 2015, I was talking a lot about the Shemitah. Everything I was talking about was the Shemitah. For people who don't know about that, essentially the Shemitah happens every 7 years. It's a Jewish occult sort of well-known thing amongst the financial elites, and even Christine Lagarde talks about the 7 years. She talks about the magic number 7. As you know, a lot of these elites are very into occult and numerology and things like that. And I had uncovered that they were planning to essentially, and they do this all the time, to essentially crash everything in the third quarter of 2015. And we did see a lot of that. The third quarter of 2015 was the worst quarter for stocks around the world since 2008, which was the last Shemitah. So yeah, 7 years. It's a 7-year cycle. The last major market crash before 2015 was in 2008 on the exact end day of the Shemitah year. The one before that was in 2001. It was on September 17th. The day the U.S. stock markets opened after 9/11 was the biggest stock market crash to that date. That was on the end date of the Shemitah. The 1987 stock market crash, so 2 Shemitahs before that, was just 2 weeks after the Shemitah end day. And so there seems to be something to the Shemitah thing. And so since then, so Shemitah ended in September of last year, 2015, This actually is the seventh Shemitah. So every seven Shemitahs, so a Shemitah is 7 years times 7, that's every 49 years is a special Shemitah. I call it the Super Shemitah. It's also called the Jubilee year. And I've been saying that because of this, and also a ream of information and research I've been doing for 6 years now with the Dollar Vigilante, I've been expecting a major crisis collapse to happen starting in 2015 or 2016. It did start in 2015. 2016 is the Jubilee year, and interestingly enough, just at the Davos conference just 2 days ago, William White, who was the chief economist at the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central banks, it's the echelon of central banks, he said we are in a debt jubilee. So they are very aware of what's going on, and he said this is going to be much worse than 2008. I agree with him. I've been saying that since last year, that this is what's coming is going to be much worse than 2008. We could be looking at the entire destruction of the entire financial and monetary systems this year. And if it isn't this year, it's going to be soon enough. If you just look at all the economic and financial data, this system is unsustainable. This system of going into massive amounts of debt, which almost every country is now. The U.S. now has $19 trillion worth of debt, just a massive amount that is actually doubled since the last Shemitah in 2008. It's doubled, the U.S. national debt. If you add U.S. national debt and liabilities, things like socialist insecurity, as I call it, and other entitlements, it's actually over $100 trillion, which works out to well over $250,000 per person in the U.S. of U.S. federal government debt and liabilities. This system is unsustainable. George Soros actually said in 2008 that the financial system actually did collapse, and all they're doing now, and I agree with him, and I hate George Soros for obvious reasons, but I agree with him on that. But the reason that it is still going is because they've gone completely Keynesian craziness. They're printing money at never before seen levels. There's never been such a thing as quantitative easing with the Federal Reserve before. They've launched that since 2008. They've now had 3 of them. They've increased the money supply massively, and they're just getting started, in my opinion. And Europe is even worse. This is going to be a collapse coming, and I think it's going to be this year. And like I said, if it's not this year, it's not going to be much more than 2 years, or it's literally could be months. It could be days, really, at this point. We're really on the cusp of a crisis like we've never actually seen in human history.
Well, we're actually seeing oil prices at the lowest right now, and they're having a huge economic turmoil on the market itself. It's interesting to see the United States and Saudi Arabia, and also the United States now making a deal with Iran, opening up the oil markets, producing more oil, lowering the price, creating more economic turmoil, trying to economically destroy countries like Iran and Russia and Venezuela, their counter enemies. How do you see this kind of unfolding with oil as low as it is right now? And do you see the price of oil going down? And what kind of effects do you see it having in the long term?
Yeah, oil is very interesting. Just before the 2008 crash, that oil collapsed just like it just did in the last year. So that is a harbinger, I think, of things to come. If you look back to the Great Depression, that was engineered by the Federal Reserve. They increased the money supply dramatically in the late 1920s, and then they reduced the money supply dramatically in 1929. That caused the Great Depression. It caused massive stock market collapse. The U.S. stock markets were down 85%, I believe, between 1929 and 1931, which also happened to be a Shemitah year, by the way. This thing gets deep. The deeper you look into it, the crazier it gets. But they actually engineer a lot of these collapses, and I believe they're engineering to some extent this collapse. And these things sort of have to collapse anyway because they're so unsustainable. They print so much money, and they lower interest rates, so the whole world goes into massive amounts of debt, and then they crash it all, and they pick up things at pennies on the dollar like they did during the Great Depression.
Yeah, it's inflation and deflation, making the market high and then selling a lot of their stuff, then making the market low, and then buying up all the stuff for pennies on the dollar. Just like you said, we've seen bankers do that throughout the years. What phase are we in now? What are the bankers going to be doing? What do you predict as the economic forecaster? And how are they going to be profiting off of it? Because it seems suicidal, because it seems like the effects are reverberating everywhere, and it's at a very, very dangerous place. Are they as suicidal? Are they as crazy as you make them out to be?
Yeah, I think they are. And I think you would sort of agree with me from what you've seen of them at places like the Bilderberg conference where we were. And these sort of people, these are not, these people are strange. I don't even know if they're totally human. They have this plan to create a one world government. They want to control and dominate the entire planet and all humanity. That's been fairly well documented over the years, and they control the central banks. All of these things they do, for example, the attack on Libya, this just came out, and I think you covered it, Luke. You covered everything. I can't even keep up with everything.
The gold dinar that Gaddafi was going to build to get the U.S. dollar off the petrodollar to make the dollar not the world reserve currency traded in oil. That was a huge threat through the State Department, and they just released emails by the State Department showing how we needed to get rid of Gaddafi because he's going to threaten the great petrodollar, the great trade of oil. But I think, it's kind of interesting because now the United States is overproducing it. It seems like they kind of lost the control of the U.S. reserve currency, and now they're just crashing everything. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. I may be totally wrong. Economics is exactly a very complicated, a very, very kind of complex, weird system that has a whole bunch of different names and a whole bunch of different words that confuse the crap out of people. But one thing I wanted to note from you, Jeff, is I've been hearing about this economic crash for like 10 years. You've been telling us about the Shemitah coming in 2015. What makes this different than all the other times that we've been hearing that the market is going to crash?
Well, actually, a lot of people will say that there's people like Doug Casey, who's a bit of a mentor of mine, who have been saying that this was going to crash in the 1970s. And actually, I've explained why I think it hasn't completely, totally crashed yet, but why it will this time. And of course, that's a very dangerous position to take, because if I'm wrong, I'll look like an idiot. But as you know, Luke, I'm willing to go with what I feel and what I think is really happening. So in the 1970s, essentially everything goes back to 1913 with the founding of the Federal Reserve on Christmas Eve in 1913, which was essentially a fascist private banker takeover of the U.S., and it still is to this day. It was Rothschild who said, "I care not who makes the laws if I control the money." It's whoever controls the money in a country is really who runs the country, and the Federal Reserve is who runs the people who run the Federal Reserve. It's not Janet Yellen, it's not Ben Bernanke. These people are teleprompter readers, just like Barack Obama. They just take orders. They just read off the teleprompter. There's people behind them, which we've seen at places like Bilderberg and places like that, which you've been covering for years, that really call the shots. So it all started in 1913. That was really the beginning of this system, and then it really started to fall off the rails in 1971, and the U.S. was essentially bankrupt after the Vietnam War, and at that point, they had to take the gold backing away from the dollar. At that point, all currencies in the world were backed by the dollar because it was backed by gold. So in 1971, on August 15th, when Richard Nixon removed temporarily the gold backing away from the dollar, all of a sudden, every currency in the world, except for possibly the Swiss franc and maybe a few others, didn't have any backing whatsoever, except for the U.S. dollar, which had no backing whatsoever. So for the first time in human history, we had a nearly global currency system that was backed by nothing. It was just pieces of paper with dead criminals printed on them, same way they are today. And in the U.S., they even have a all-seeing eye pyramid printed on it. And so in the 1970s, things started to really get close to a collapse. It actually did. But because the governments at that point were restrained by gold up until 1971, they hadn't built up enough debt that the whole system would collapse yet. And it came very close, but they actually were allowed interest rates to rise in the late 1970s to a high of 18%, which actually stopped all the inflationary things that were occurring and actually reset the system to an extent. And we had that all the way from 1980 to about 2000. And then we've actually had it's been going down ever since then. So in 2008, we have all these governments around the world with massive amounts of debt, and that was the real issue. And what happened was it effectively reached its end point where it couldn't really go any further with the money supply the way it was. And so as things started to really collapse, they decided, central banks around the world, including the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, all decided to print massive amounts of money just to keep the system alive. So that's where we're at now. And since then, these governments have gone into much, much more debt, which was the cause of the near collapse in 2008. So when this next collapse happens, it's going to be so much worse, people will not believe it, and it actually could end the entire financial and monetary system, which would be very dramatic and the biggest event in human history.
Yes, especially when you look at all the factors, especially when you look at how much the United States is in debt. All these factors have been a huge factor. When it's going to finally topple, when it's going to finally happen, I don't think anybody knows, but it's great to hear your news and analysis about what you're seeing on the ground, because you're a lot more astute to this subject than I am. And I thank you for all the research and all the things that you're paying attention to that I don't have that much resources or time to, but you're pretty much pinpoint on that. Now, Jeff, other than just the financial news that we've been covering, you have an amazing conference coming up in a little bit less than a month. Anarchapulco. Seriously, I've been to conferences all over the world. I go to at least three once a month. Anarchapulco was one of the best personal conferences that I ever been to, ever. Huge, amazing lineup that you have this year. I mean, you have Barry Cooper, Miley Yiannopoulos, Adam Kokesh, and then you just announced today that you're also going to be helping me with Change Media University. But tell us about just some of the amazing speakers. You also have an ayahuasca freaking retreat happening at your. I've never been to a conference where there was hardcore, just like politics, news, geopolitics, self-help, parenting, ayahuasca. It's like all in one.
So Anarchapulco is sort of this conference that has erupted out of this awakening of freedom that people want, and what they say they have in the U.S. is not freedom. The U.S. is one of the least free countries in the world. You can't do anything there, as you know. It's just taxes, regulations, central banks control the money supply. So this conference we started last year, and it sold out, and so it's obviously very something that people are really catching on to, and it's called an anarcho-capitalist conference, and I should explain that just briefly. Anarcho means anarchist, and all that means is you don't want to be ruled by someone without your permission, and I don't know why anyone would, but a lot of people seem to want to. I don't personally want to be ruled by someone and told what to do without my permission. And of course, if I have a contract with somebody and I say to you, Luke, I'm going to give you $100 and you give me that pen in your hand, that's a contract, and I should do that, but I shouldn't have someone come in and say, hey, I'm your ruler, you owe me money. That's, the only difference between government and mafia is size. So that's the anarchy side. The capitalist side, that word has been misused and confused, just like the word anarchy, but all it really means is free market, voluntary trade. And so this conference is all about everything free and voluntary. And it doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you could punch us in the face, we won't do anything. We believe in self-defense as well. It's called anarcho-capitalism or just anarchism. And you've been on my show, Anarchast Luke, so you know all about it. You've been to Anarchapulco, and you understand what this community is all about. So we're going to have this conference. It's February 19th to 21st. We got so many great speakers, including yourself, Luke, Larkin Rose, he's amazing, Walter Block, Mr. Libertarian, Adam Kokesh, as you mentioned, of Adam versus the Man. A lot of people might know Ken O'Keefe. I'm a huge fan of his. He's a freedom fighter, anti-war activist, ex-Marine. You mentioned Barry Cooper. He's an actual ex-narcotics officer who is gone, and now he's attacking the war on drugs. So amazing conference, as you know, February 19th to 21st, called Anarchapulco. And one of the cool things about the conference is we have so many workshops all around it. I have a Dollar Vigilante, which is about finance and economics, the day before the conference. We also have a peaceful parenting and unschooling workshop, all kinds of workshops. And one of them is yours, Change Media University, which you had last year, which was amazing. Had a 100% satisfaction rate. Everyone loved it. And you're going to be doing it again. So I'm looking forward to that, Luke.
Yeah, and then, the cap is at 50 people. You've been very generous enough to say that you're going to be a part of it. Dan Dix of Press for Truth, that CA, is going to be a part of it. Adam Kokesh of Adam versus the Man is going to be a part of it. So you have the opportunity and the possibility to learn the tricks of the trade, the life hacks, the technical knowledge and well-being, not only to be the best journalist, the best YouTuber, the best person, but also anything that you ever want in this life, because we will teach you from A to Z all aspects of not only confidence, of NLP, of getting things done, but also going after your dream, achieving it, and accomplishing it all within yourself. Thank you, Jeff, for offering up, your time. All three of you guys are amazing teachers. I mean, just for the very fact it's going to be me, Dan Dix, Adam Kokesh, yourself, giving off everything to the students. It's going to be an incredible, incredible boot camp. I'm really excited about it. We're going to cap it at 50 to make sure that all the 50 people get all the right information that they can, so we're not overflooded with too many people. So definitely sign up. Check out Anarchapulco. The event conference information will be in the description below. The boot camp will be below that. Definitely check it out. Jeff, I want to thank you so much. You're an awesome human being. You're doing an incredible conference. Even an ayahuasca freaking ceremony during You're crazy, but I love you, and that's why I love you, Jeff. And also, just know I'm gonna put in that B-roll of you sleeping in the beginning when you were mentioning.
I figured you would.
I just can't stop.
I know you can't stop, can you? But thank you, Luke. Huge fan. You've taken your game up a notch even in the last year. I didn't think you even possibly could, but your work's been amazing. So thank you for spreading it. And your workshop is so important. We need thousands and thousands of independent media out there doing the same work as you. I know you don't want to be the only one out there doing it, and you can't be the only one out there doing it. So you can come to your conference and your workshop just one day and learn from all of these guys. I think between you, Dan Dix, and Adam Kokesh, you have over 1 billion views on YouTube. So you guys know what you're doing when it comes to independent media, journalism, and things like that. So hopefully I'm sure it'll probably sell out again, but hopefully it does, because we need at least 50 more on the ground out there doing what you and Dan Dix do and spreading the truth, exposing the system for what it is. And we can, if we have that, mainstream media is dying. We know that, Luke. It's just it's already almost dead. It's really, no one watches it anymore. I think it was Larry King who left CNN, and he said CNN should just put on SpongeBob SquarePants commercial or cartoons because they'd get better ratings. And he actually went to RT, which was interesting, which is the Russian propaganda channel. But the RT puts out way more truth than CNN, which is almost completely propaganda. So hopefully a lot of people come out, and hopefully we see them out there all over after the conference exposing Rockefeller when you can't be there, or Henry Kissinger, or whoever it is, going to the Davos conference, for example, going on right now. Hopefully we'll have them all out there exposing the truth, and that's how we change the world.
Yep, the mainstream media is dying. It's time for us to pick up the slack and destroy them by doing their job better. We had an incredible year. Our subscribers double from last year. We had 150 last year. Now we have over 300, and that's only because of you and your amazing viewership. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate your time and the amazing conference you're doing. Don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, and share this video. We're going to have a lot more content coming here your way on youtube.com/wearechange. Okay, so our accommodations are not as good as they were yesterday, but they will definitely do. We're not at the Bilderberg Hotel anymore, but Bilderberg gave us some free snacks. The general manager told us, grab whatever you want, so we did, and we have some exclusive items for you here. Now, I wanted to make a very important video because there's a lesson that I've been learning throughout my whole life, but this kind of road trip that we've been on recently with the G7 and the Bilderberg Group meeting, and this